Since we launched Alp, we've had 4 flavors, but we are proud to announce Alp has a brand new flavor, one of several we'll be rolling out over the next year or so, and it is Sweet Nectar. I have personally tested this product 2 at a time, and it's excellent. Sweet Nectar, the new flavor out from Alp, really, really good. Go to alppouch.com. You can order it in bulk by the pallet if you want. I have strongly recommended Sweet Nectar. And stay tuned for more new flavors.
I agree with Elon Musk. Within the hour, he put on X the following. I have it right here so you can all see it. He said, "I'm sorry, but I just can't stand it anymore. This massive, outrageous, pork-filled congressional spending bill is a disgusting abomination. Shame on those who voted for it. You did wrong," he said to them. "You know it. It will massively increase the already gigantic budget deficit to $2.5 trillion and burden American citizens with crushingly unsustainable debt." It's right here. He's right.
Putin once said that the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 was the greatest geopolitical catastrophe of the 20th century, and not without reason. After the dissolution of the USSR in December 1991, the post-Soviet space was littered with territorial and ethnic disputes, with some of them turning into brutal and long-lasting conflicts, many of which remain frozen to this day. One such conflict is that of Transnistria. Wedged between Moldova and western Ukraine, and officially part of Moldova, is the de facto unrecognized breakaway Republic of Transnistria, which still has the hammer and sickle on its flag. This 4,163 square kilometer sliver of land on the western bank of the Dniester River has large ethnic Russian and Ukrainian populations. Transnistria broke away from Moldova in September 1990 due to concerns over minority rights within the then Moldovan Soviet Socialist Republic, and the potential for an independent Moldova to join neighbouring Romania. This new de facto Transnistrian Republic would remain within the USSR, but its separation from the Moldovan SSR would be rejected and annulled by then Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev. After the USSR fell in 1991, conflict would erupt between the newly independent Moldova and Transnistria, which had already declared its own independence from the Soviet Union. With the help of some Russian personnel who were stationed in Moldova before the collapse of the USSR, Transnistrian forces would cement their control over what is now the Pridnestrovian Moldavan Republic, or Transnistria, and a ceasefire agreement between the two sides would be signed in July 1992, leaving the conflict frozen to this day. As part of this 1992 agreement, a 1,500-strong Russian peacekeeping force was, and still is, stationed in Transnistria. Though Russia does not recognize Transnistria as an independent state, it does maintain relations with, and has influence in, Transnistria. The Transnistrian conflict is a major roadblock for Moldovan ambitions to join the EU and NATO, and allows Russia to exert leverage over Moldova, and this is the way things look set to stay for the foreseeable future.
Welcome back to the SCIF. It's Hump Day. We got a lot to talk about today. Today's topic is the art of the deal. Can Trump close it in multiple areas? And who the hell is in charge? We have Mike Pompeo over in Ukraine. We have Lindsey Graham. We have Denang Dick. All of them warmongering to keep the war going in Ukraine. I mean, yesterday Pompeo said essentially we're going to win and nobody can stop us and it's going to get bad. And so who is behind this? Who's driving this? And who's in charge? We're going to ask that question of a lot of people over the next few weeks because it's getting a little bit scary out there. Welcome to the crew. Thank you for joining us today. Love all the chats. You're clear and hot in the chat, so thank you for all of that. We'll try to bring some comments on later in the day. I want to give a quick shout out to our partner, What Finger News. If you're looking for an aggregator of all kind of stuff that has your view of the world, What Finger News is definitely at whatfinger.com. Check them out. A big supporter of ours. They post a lot of our content, and we really appreciate it. We're having a packed show today. I've got Tom Teague on the markets in the second segment. We're going to delve into everything that's going on from tariffs to China to interest rates to the Fed, everything. So everybody loves Tom. He's a big favorite. In the second hour, I've got Danny Hulkower, who's a firefighter who was forced to get the jab. He didn't do it, and he left, and he's persecuted. He's going to tell his story. Very important. The mRNA vaxes are still out there. We got Skittles that are healthy now, but the mRNA death shot bioweapons are still coming our way. So we got to fight that. And then I have Brent Beecham to talk about, former fighter pilot, U.S. Air Force, to talk about how we protect against drones. My goodness, this is really bad. So one of the big things I want to talk about today is the area of Transdniester, which you saw the cold open. It's a sliver of land on the edge of Moldova, between Moldova and Ukraine, right? It's actually part of old Romania. It's kind of a separate area, separatist area from Romania. I was there. I was in Ukraine during the invasion. I ended up walking across the Moldovan border when my team got me to the border, as dodging Russian paratroopers and everything. And I went into Moldova and then was taken into Romania. So I saw this area really up close. I just want to play this short video. It's about 2 minutes of me coming into Moldova and what was going on at that time. So here we go.
Hello, this is L Todd Wood, live right now from Iași, Romania. It's been a long day. We started moving this morning west Ukraine, and we got reports that Russian paratroopers may be landing around Lviv near the Polish border, which we were headed to and hoping to cross there. So we had to make a split decision to do a high-speed run down to the Moldovan border. We crossed earlier, and we've had a long ride with multiple different types of transportation to get to the airport here at Iași. So taking a flight out of here shortly, and we'll be back to the U.S. and CD Media will be continue to report live from Ukraine with our team on the ground here. It just won't be me. A lot of developments in country. Reports that Kiev is encircled, fighting breaking out in multiple cities. On a sad note, the largest airplane in the world was burned to the ground, historical treasure. I forget the city where that was located, but that was heartbreaking. We've seen with our own eyes Ukrainian men in the towns with hunting rifles out protecting critical infrastructure because there's a lot of fear of saboteurs. And the missile attacks were increasing, bomb alerts increasing, so we decided to move this morning and just go. We had hoped that the fighting would die down, but the reverse happened. So we made the choice to head down to Moldova and crossed. I want to thank my team in Ukraine. They'll be staying because they're Ukrainian citizens and men and can't leave the country and may be drafted, but a strong group of guys. And they just want what's best for Ukraine. And they want the Soros network removed in the country, the Ukrainian patriots. Anyway, this is L Todd Wood from Iași, Romania, reporting live. We'll be back tomorrow with more information from Ukraine from our team on the ground. Thank you.
So just wanted to show you our expertise, and we do have reporters all over the world. We are the global wire service. Without the globalist spin, we get you the news from, hold on, let me get rid of that. We bring you the news that you need to know, and we do it with people on the ground. We're not just out reading Telegram. We get a lot of information all night long. It's posted, it's collated, it's curated into this show. It's the basis of this show. It's the information we bring you. We try to bring you the best stories. So put cdm.press in your daily scan. It's really important that you do that for us morning, noon, and night. Traffic is really important. Share the links, share the stories, share the videos. Our Rumble channel is growing. Please support us there, CDM1. Our X account is growing as well. Lots of interest there all over the world. And I want to say a special hello to our Indian listeners. We've got a big group of Indians coming in, showing a lot of interest in CDM. And that's fantastic because people can smell truthful news. And everybody all over the world is hungry for it. So today is June 4th. I'm L Todd Wood, and this is your mission brief. Dear Mr. President, who's in charge? We're going to talk about that over the show. Russia wants peace, it seems, but on their terms. Zelensky doesn't seem to want peace and is bashing the Russian leadership in public, doing anything he can to, rub salt in the wounds on both sides. We're still waiting on retaliation after the drone strikes yesterday. Trump fights CCP on tariffs and rare earth minerals. We're going to talk about this because this is a huge. China agreed to allow rare earths to the U.S. and then they closed it down. And there's a lot of finger pointing on both sides. Transdniester we're going to dig into, and then a shakeup on the Lebanon desk in the Middle East. It looks like Morgan Ortegas is leaving with two others. We'll discuss that a little bit. We'll be back after the break with Tom Teague. Stay with us on the SCIF, the best intelligence show out there. Be right back.
Celebrate our newest launch, Rev 7. I'm bringing you an amazing introductory offer, plus an exclusive overstock sale that you're not going to want to miss. Rev 7 is our premium energy drink that tastes great and gives you energy all day with no jitters and no crashes. That's because there's no sugar and no caffeine. I'm so sure you're going to love Rev 7 that for a limited time you can try our 3-pack absolutely free. Or check out our Percale bed sheets. I can't believe I'm even going to say this. Every color, every style, every size, only $29.88. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save 20% on our Rev 7 12-packs or try our introductory 3-pack absolutely free. And our Percale bed sheets, all sizes, only $29.88, even the queens and kings. Inventory is extremely limited, so order
Tucker
now.
Carlson, you may have noticed that the companies whose products you buy tend to kind of hate you. They're controlled by massive multinational corporations, and they have all kinds of weird agendas that you're supporting when you buy their products. We didn't realize that nicotine pouches, which we've used for years, were in this category. We just want a nicotine pouch. And then they lecture you and take the money you give them to support things that you hate. So we decided we're going to make our own, and we did. And it is, we can say, not bragging here, just stating fact, the single best nicotine pouch in the world. It's called ALP, and it comes in all kinds of excellent flavors. Wintergreen, tropical fruit, chilled mint, refreshing chill, sweet nectar, and a bunch of others that we're rolling out. By the way, there are 20 per tin, not 15 like some of our competitors who will not be named. Zin. And they're in 3, 6, and 9 milligrams. It is the single best nicotine pouch ever made. Go to alppouch.com. You will not regret it.
Of the Green Beret, silver wings upon their chest. These are men, America's best. 100 men will test today, but only 3 win the Green Beret.
Welcome back to the SCIF. Please support our sponsors, MyPillow. Go there. Christmas is coming. It's going to be here before you know it. Get some gifts, not from the big box retailers. Don't run out at the last minute and try to get stuff made in China. Buy it from Mike Lundell at mypillow.com. Use promo code CDM and get the best discounts. And you support free media, and it's really important to support Mike with his trial out in Colorado right now with Eric Coomer. and also supporting free media, the legacy you can bring to your children and grandchildren. Also, ALP. I know there's some Zen users out there that haven't yet tried the better alternative ALP. Go to alppouch.com/CDM and order a few tins. There's much more in the tin. The taste is better. They're moister. Just a better experience all around. So don't use the woke Zen. My goodness, buy the good stuff from us and support free media as well. And I want to give a shout out to Bill Quinn, who had a stroke. He's one of our big talents at CDM. He's in the hospital. Prayers out to Bill Quinn and the people in Georgia. So tonight on the Georgia show, I'll have BKP, Brian K. Pritchard, with me to do that show, and probably until Bill gets better and comes back. So prayers out to Bill Quinn. I'm going to bring in Tom Teague right now. Tom, my friend, down in my stomping grounds. How you doing down there?
I'm doing great. How are you?
All good. So President Trump is saying China is really hard to deal with. What say you on what's happening with the tariffs, you think?
Well, I mean, as usual, China's not playing ball. I think during Trump's first administration, it took them about 3 years to get China to the table, and then suddenly COVID came out. So
Yeah.
China has always proven tricky to deal with, and they have a very different value system than we do in terms of, especially the communists, in terms of coming to the table and making deals and sticking to deals. So I think this time it's like you mentioned before, the rare earth stuff. And I also think that it's not helpful that they tried to smuggle in this agent into the U.S. This what was it? It was
some kind
some
of
biological
fungus.
fungus, which it makes you wonder about all the I mean, this is very conspiratory, I know, but if that's a word, but I think if you look at China, they're obviously aware of our debt situation. They're obviously aware of our sensitivity to inflation. In my opinion, China orchestrated. They opened 15 months later than we did after COVID, and that's absurd. They knew exactly what it was, and they have no regard for human life. So their zero tolerance policy was only to gum up supply chains, and that caused 8% inflation in this country, and it's all but wrecked this economy and the bond market. So I wonder if these agents they're bringing over, or if some of these like industrial espionage looking things that they did with, for example, with chickens and viruses, or burning facilities that were grain facilities or meat packing plants. And they bought a lot of meat packing plants, and they control that. I think they control Smithfields.
Yep.
I wonder if all this is sort of on purpose to try and hurt this country. So I think there's a much bigger picture than just the tariffs with Trump. And I think everyone should ask themselves, there's a lot of people who claim to be these free market people, but do you really want to be buying your strategic stuff from a country that's doing this to us?
Yeah.
I mean, these people that brought this agent in were ostensibly connected to the CCP. So are you kidding me? I just don't know how naive you could be on the whole thing, but I mean, it's definitely hurting China, the tariffs. They're definitely nervous about it. I think this administration's standing up to them. I think on a military basis, we're starting to understand what a threat they are. Their entire military has been built to take on ours.
Yes.
With that is the purpose. And they're vying for, position in the world, and they're not good players. They don't play fair. And
sure,
we know that. So I think Trump's doing the right thing, and I think we'll eventually get there. But it's definitely causing some headaches. I mean, so
on
I
the
think go ahead.
You mentioned the zero tolerance thing. I mean, that hurt their own. I think at least it made a lot of animosity among the population, because they literally
absolutely
homes
but Xi's kind of cemented himself in there, so they don't have any semblance of a democratic system where they have to worry about blowback from stuff like that. And they can push their people a long way, and they can print money, and they can do loans and all this stuff. And there's a lot of like CCP sycophants out there that think that China's in this like great position right now. They're really not. But they're basically run by an autocrat, and he can do whatever he wants. And they'll just have to get in line. And at some point it's going to erupt. And I think, I'm not an expert on China, but I think at some point, they're going to have to bend the knee because they're not very far away from that right now.
Well, I think we're getting to borrow a phrase, a come to Jesus meeting between the U.S. and China in some form or another. I mean, they're collapsing, from a Ponzi scheme standpoint. They have infiltrated us. They've forced collapse on our country from the food supplies you mentioned, our technology, Congress with the debt, which is I want to talk about that with you. But there are also some big COVID issues going on over there again. I read yesterday that a lot of people are really, really sick in China. What is that? I mean, did they have another strain over there or something? I mean, because we don't have that.
I've heard about that. Well, I've heard that there's one over there. I don't trust anything that they're doing, frankly. So, it worked the first time. I don't think it would work again here. I don't think there's any way that they could talk Americans into having any sort of lockdown. And, this weekend I was having conversations with people. Our government also benefited big time from COVID because they bailed out all the profligate states like Illinois, New York, and California. It went to teachers unions. It went to pensions that were underfunded. It basically bailed these states out. And
after Trump,
I just don't think we'll do it again. Correct.
With the SALT, tax deduction and all that stuff, he destroyed all their financing. And that, you're right, that's what that was about, was to refill the coffers.
Well, also we've had this huge we were having this huge migration during COVID from blue states to red states, and that's slowed down massively. And you can see it with the house builders, the home builders, at how much inventory they're carrying right now because people can't afford to sell their houses and move their mortgages and get a new mortgage. So like that's, that was another thing that that kind of ties in. I've said this before, but I believe that part of the bond market sell-off was orchestrated intentionally to slow that down, slow that migration down.
Catherine Austin Fitts is, when she interviewed with Tucker, she's talking, which I've interviewed her before, but she was talking about the housing crisis in 2008 was intentional to, pull money out of the system somewhere, and it went somewhere. She's talking 21 trillion or whatever, but all of this I think has been orchestrated. So where are we at on the 10 years? It's right 4.5
434. It's rallied today after this ADP number. It was a lot weaker than what was expected. It's not a huge number, but I listen to people all day who trade bonds tell me that it's not going to make a difference if the Fed cuts. And I'll share something with you. I looked at the off the run treasury bonds. So everything from like 10 years out. A lot of the stuff was issued during COVID was issued with coupons of and off the run for listeners. It's things that have been issued in the past and are not the most current issued bonds in that.
Not on the yield curve.
Maturities.
Yeah.
Correct. And there's a decent amount. So I looked at everything that was off the run that I could find, and I came up, there's about $3 trillion of debt that's been issued. If you look at the discounts that's trading to, because they were issued with much lower coupons, and of course yields are higher now, so prices are down. The face value currently is around $2 trillion. So there's $1 trillion of face value that's disappeared. So ostensibly the Treasury could go out and buy these bonds and get rid of $1 trillion worth of debt, right? That's not a lot. It's like 3%, right? But if yields, people who are like panicking that yields could go to 6-7%, that's going to be even more of a discount, obviously, than where it is today. But you'd have to refinance, right, at current rates. Yes, but here's the interesting thing, right? Like, so if you get rid of debt, then your debt profile looks better. Your spread should come in on that basis. If that's really what's causing it, I don't necessarily think that is. But it would also make it easier. It would make it more difficult for the Fed to avoid cutting rates. And I think they've been doing that for a long time. And, we're seeing, we had an inflation print last week in the PCE, and it was the lowest in like 5 years. So all of this like doom and gloom stuff about inflation is going to come back with tariffs. China's already said that they're going to suck up a lot of those tariffs. Home Depot, various big retailers have said they're not going to pass along these costs to people. So you're not seeing it. And you're also not seeing the sort of like panic of people trying to completely stack in inventories that people had anticipated. And these numbers that had come out on inflation from like University of Michigan expectations, if you look at the graphs of Democrats polled versus Republicans, the Democrats are in like cloud cuckoo land. They think that inflation is going to be at like 6%. And if you look back historically, they're always there. They're always way off. Because they believe the media, they believe the narrative. It's not that they're dumb. It's just that they're naive and they listen to the media. But that's just not happening. So it's going to be more. And Trump tweeted this morning that, it's time for, with this ADP number, it's time for the Fed to start cutting. So I think you'll see, a lot of people think that it's July. I think the Fed probably wouldn't surprise people and do it in June. But I think once you start seeing these cuts, you have to realize that along our yield curve, there's $7 trillion in money market funds, and that's all kind of short end. When rates start coming down, there's people that need to get certain yields on bonds, and they have to start chasing. And it was probably one of the biggest tactical errors of a generation, but Janet Yellen didn't go and finance our debt with longer dated paper. And that would have been
issuing 100-year bonds at 0%.
Correct. And which they would be trading at like a penny on the dollar right now if they'd done that. But the thing is because there's not much supply on the long end relative, that money is going to have to go somewhere. And my belief is when they start cutting rates, you're going to unleash $7 trillion, and it's going to find its way back into bonds, into longer dated paper, because people will need to take the risk that they don't currently have to, because yields are still very high and there's still a lot of real yield in the short end. And it'll also come back and find its way into equities. And there's a lot of stuff that's like, I was looking at Pepsi yesterday, and Pepsi obviously has been hit because of the Maha stuff, and they produce a lot of food that's questionable in terms of like what the health benefits and what it does. But the stock's yielding 4%. It's just gotten absolutely destroyed. So there's a lot of names like that out there that are value type names that have done really poorly. And I think once the Fed starts cutting rates, you're going to start seeing this money flow out of money markets back into the equity market. So it won't just be like the high flyers like Nvidia, AMD, all these other names, Palantir. No one knows what Palantir does, but they have 100 times sales. That's where they trade. It's a joke.
Yeah, it is a joke.
So
I think Besant has talked about what you're talking about, right? By buying back the bonds. Isn't that what he's been talking? I forget the name he calls it, but
well, he's talking about a number of things. Yesterday, they made it. They allowed, I think, Wells Fargo to go out and to start adding own risk, basically, to start expanding and to to take more risk and have more loans, and that was a big deal. Besant's been talking about this supplemental leverage ratio a lot, which charges banks to own treasuries and to own reserves, which is absurd that they would do that for something like treasuries. So I think they're looking at loosening that restriction, which is going to be helpful to the bond market. And I'm sure at some stage, if we get to 6% on 30 years, I am absolutely sure that they're going to come in and start buying some of this stuff out, because your question was, we have to refinance it. But if the Fed's cutting rates, then, and let's say your bonds are trading at 50 cents on the dollar, you're buying it back. You only have to finance 50 cents on the dollar. And then if the coupon is half, or the coupon that you were paying is half, it's the same. You're still paying the same amount of interest every year.
Yeah.
So,
interesting.
So
you're saying all these like pension funds and people who have to hit certain yield targets have to put the money in the market somewhere. And
well, they will if they can't get it in the short end. They absolutely will. And right now, like if you look at Bunds, I think are trading around 29 basis points real yield. And I think 10-year treasuries are trading, last time I looked, it's like 180 something basis points real yield. So the US bonds are definitely cheap. It's just no one needs to be in that long end, because obviously any kind of yield move has a much bigger price move on the longer bonds than it does in the shorter bonds. So you're taking a lot more risk inherently, right? So no one's going to go out and dip their toes in that until they have to. And lowering rates is a way to make people move that money. And I think because there's not very much out there relative to what there is on the short end, it could have an amplified effect. I think that's what Besson and Trump have wanted the whole time, right? And that's why they're playing this game with the Fed, and the Fed's not cooperating, and they're making up excuses. I think probably everyone has some understanding of how this mechanism would work, and no one wants Trump to succeed, right?
Interesting.
Particularly Jerome Powell.
Yeah, no kidding. And the whole matrix behind him. Tom, we're going to take
Right.
a quick break. We'll be right back.
Sure.
Stay with me.
Sure.
The bird flu is circulating. We're getting more and more press, more fear mongering, more warnings about this. First, let's start with that. What say you on?
Well, what I say is it specifically is not circulating. It's in animals. There's one human, maybe two transmissions, no human-to-human transmission. And stand by, everybody. If there is some sort of sudden human-to-human transmission, you should immediately be suspicious that gain of function was involved with that. Just the fact that they're taking an animal virus and going nuts on it in the press and talking about it all the time, that to me leads me to believe that they have concerns that somebody is doing something with that virus, because this would not happen naturally, in my opinion.
Our world is changing rapidly. Many crucial systems we depend upon are collapsing. And the most important system that is failing is the food supply.
Mr. President, this Council is more than aware of the multiple challenges and threats the world is facing today. But the threat of famine, people starving slowly to death, must be a red line.
These food prices are going to keep going up and up, and they're going to keep feeding excuse after excuse, narrative after narrative.
Yeah.
You're going to have to get off that treadmill and start getting more autonomous with your own food growing.
You want to make sure that you can eat, because frankly, food is the biggest issue as we are going through these transitions.
But amidst the chaos, there is a path to resilience. Marjorie Wildcraft is the female leader of the survival and preparedness movement. Marjorie has taught millions of people how to grow an abundance of food in a grid-down situation, even if you have no experience, are older, or out of shape.
I've spent decades finding the fastest, easiest, and funnest ways for the average person to be able to grow a lot of food. I've created a step-by-step process that's so simple that even kids to elders have been using it in order to grow a lot of their own food. And you can too, even if you have no experience, you're older, or you're out of shape.
Growing your own food is like printing your own money. Get started today.
Tom, what's going on with the BBB, the big beautiful bill? What do you think's happening there, my friend?
Well, I mean, I think you have to look at it pragmatically. The tax cuts that we have that are expiring, if they come back, it'll be the biggest nominal tax increase we've had in decades.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, that's the important thing. We have a 3-seat majority in the House.
Yeah.
A lot of these guys come from states that are going to be beneficiaries of this Green Deal nonsense. So if they go against the BBB, they're effectively going to end their, seat. They're going to lose in the midterms. And I think that you have to look big picture. If we lose the midterms, that's going to be it. Trump's it's going to be like it was last time. The last 2 years were a waste of time. He couldn't get anything done. So I think there's a big picture to play for there. And the other thing is the OCB is definitely not factoring in any kind of growth in the economy and any kind of revenue growth. And to go back to when Bill Clinton was president, he cut capital gains, I think, down to from 28 to 20%. And we had the biggest revenue intake in the history of the country in taxes. So you can look at it two ways. The Democrats have like a Cloward Piven view of the U.S. They just want to tax people and they just want to spend money. That doesn't work.
And steal with both hands.
Right. It's exactly. And employ their family in USAID. But and I think Bessent is done a fantastic job so far. But I think they look at it as the only way out of this debt issue is to grow. That's it.
Yeah.
That, like, if you have spending that you cannot cut in your own house, you got to start swinging for the fences a little bit. Otherwise, you're just going to run out of money. And you got to take more risk. And that's something. And taking more risk has these ancillary benefits, because if the economy grows, you need to pay less in benefits, right? So if you really want to cut costs, you need to have a booming economy, and it needs to go you need to have 5% GDP growth year after year. And then you can start paying down some of this debt and put an end to it. But we haven't had that. And the Democrats do everything they can to stop that. They regulate stuff. They try to derail the economy, the industrial base, by trying to get rid of fossil fuels. They try to hamper the energy grid from expanding. I mean, it's just, they do everything they can to subvert and to sabotage the economy. So I think you got to look at this deal, and I understand people like Massey and Rand Paul, but libertarians are very idealistic and very out of touch with reality. So I would like to cut stuff too, but the moment you cut anything into the muscle, you're going to lose an election. That's just the way the country is. The U.S. is not a nation that experiences austerity. You know, unless we have a war and you have no choice, or we go bankrupt, but nobody wants to get there. So the best way out of this is growth. And I think people have to view it that way.
So you think they're just willing to hold their nose and let these guys pass what they want in order to get the growth in the economy, which will pop the revenue line and
that's what's going to have to happen. I mean, I wish they could cut more than they're cut, but they're cutting more in this budget than they've cut in decades, since the Second World War already. What they're doing is they're obviously cutting, taxes. They're keeping the tax cuts in place, which you need to do. They're going to get rid of the taxes on tips. They're going to get rid of, for police and all this stuff. They're going to get rid of the overtime stuff charges. So, I mean, you need to cut taxes in order to grow the economy, and that works. And we've experienced that throughout history in both types of administrations. Like I said, we've experienced during Democrats. We've experienced it much more during Republicans, and when we've had Republican Congress. But it's just not realistic to actually think that cutting benefits on people right now is gonna work, especially when we have a 3 person majority in the House. That's it.
What about I lost my train of thought. Anyway, it'll come back. What else? What else do people need to be aware of in the markets right now?
Well, I think you really got to start watching the unemployment. Like I said, I think the big spectacle is going to be whether or not the Fed cuts rates. And I think it's increasingly likely that they'll need to do it. I think the tariff stuff, like I said, I think it's not as much of a threat as what people thought. I mean, we're bringing in, I think last month we brought in $22 billion. That's a significant number. It's not in relative terms to our overall debt, but it is to it knocks the debt servicing down quite a bit, right? It's 25%. So on an annualized basis. So, I think that what you really need to watch for is the Fed moving, and that's going to unleash a lot on this economy. And I think that's the big problem that we've got right now is the Fed's just kind of sitting there doing nothing.
Yeah. And Trump's calling them out, did this morning, as you said. What's the smart money doing right now? I mean, where are people looking? Is it crypto? What is it?
Well, yeah, I mean, crypto's had a good run. I think there was some news out yesterday. People are saying that, like, these quantum computers would be able to basically break into the crypto stuff. And I think that's, I'm not a huge believer in crypto. I just don't think it has any, like, long-term value. But it is what it is, and it trades. But I'd much rather own stocks than crypto. But I think, if the Fed starts cutting rates, like I said, I think value stocks are going to do better. There's been a lot of inflows, like for month of March and April, we had a lot of outflows out of U.S. equities, like pretty significant, and that's partially what started the market sell-off. But now we're starting to see some inflows, and Nvidia, which is one of my favorites, reported earnings last week. They were like 44 billion in the quarter. Their estimates for this quarter coming up, second quarter, are like 45. So the estimates before were like 130 billion for the year. Now it's kind of, up toward 200. So this company's like growing like crazy. So, I think AI is still going to be a huge, disruptive, impactful, net positive thing in this country. So I think that's another area that
well, I was going to ask you about that. I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
There's a lot of there's a narrative out there that AI is going to be, superhuman and take over the world. And my thought is it's probably going to be like the internet, where it adds a lot of value, and people will be able to abuse it. But at the end of the day, you're still smarter than the machines. I mean, what do you think?
I think the key thing here, and this is interesting because there was something in the BBB about this, that the federal government, basically the states couldn't pass anything. I don't like that. I don't think a lot of people like that. And I don't know who put that in there and what their intent was, but it doesn't sound good to me.
Well, the lobbyist for OpenAI put it in there. That's who did it.
Yeah. That's probably true. But I don't think it's David Sachs. He's pretty squared away on this stuff. But I think the key with AI is, if you don't want it to be evil, then AI needs to be a competitive marketplace. And that's where we're going. It's not where governments want us to go, because, someone once told me, it's like whoever controls the narrative controls the people. AI is going to be such a revelation of facts, whether it's what's in the 1,000 page budget, it can summarize that in 2 seconds and come back to you. And what we've seen with Google is they have the monopoly. They have the ability to curate all the information. If you have a competitive marketplace in AI, they will not be able to do that. So that means that, like, everyone will be forced to tell mostly true things within that market. And I think that the benefits to AI, and I've already heard this from people, like, it's going to be like, how memory grew and productivity went up. This is like the third derivative of that. This is going to be so expansive. Yeah, absolutely.
Tom, thank you very much, man. Enjoy.
You got it. Anytime.
Enjoy the South. Take care. Bye.
Thanks, buddy. Talk to you soon.
Well, in the case of hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin, these are two medications that have been FDA approved for use in humans for decades. They are very, very inexpensive. Interestingly, available over the counter in almost every other country other than the US and Canada. You can just walk into a pharmacy and buy them like we buy Tylenol in much of the world, because they're that safe. And we've known for decades that ivermectin has very strong antiviral properties. It has anti-inflammatory properties, and both ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine are what we call zinc ionophores. They help to move zinc from the bloodstream into the cell, which is where it needs to be in order to fight off a virus. So lots of application for these, and we have every reason to believe that those drugs also will likely have some efficacy against H5N1 or a number of other respiratory viruses that we may meet down the road.
If you haven't noticed, gold has reached a new high, all-time highs actually, and keeps going up every day. Why is that? It's because precious metals are a long-time historical store of value. And if you own a portfolio and you have assets in the fiat currencies, i.e. stocks, bonds, cash, or whatever, you're vulnerable to hyperinflation, which is coming as our debt explodes another $1 trillion every 90 days. It's really scary. So how do you protect yourself? Go to Advisor Metals. If you look on any of our CDM.press sites, about halfway down, there's an ad for Advisor Metals. Click on it, fill out the form for your contact info, and Ira Bishotsky will contact you and talk to you. It's an easy conversation. There's no sales pitch. He's completely verified by us. He has a regulatory background we've checked into. We've checked with his bankers. We've checked with his IRA custodians for metals, and we can highly recommend Advisor Metals and IRA. So go to Advisor Metals. If you call them directly, tell them we sent you at CDM, and he'll definitely take care of you. But protect your portfolio because you really need to. It's coming. Thank you. Welcome back to the SCIF. We've got Danny Hulkower at the top of the hour. He is a Manhattan city worker who was fired for not taking the vax, and he's got a lawsuit, and we're going to hear from that. That's just a continuing story. I heard this morning that there's still guys in the military still getting kicked out for refusing to take the vax. So this is not solved at all, and the people have to rise up and stop this crap. And then later in the second hour, I have Brent Beecham. We're going to talk about how to protect American forces from drones domestically and elsewhere in our bases overseas. They're just completely and utterly vulnerable. And you saw the numbers coming out of Russia. It's very up in the air as exactly how many Russian aircraft were hit, but definitely a serious situation. And why the U.S. military didn't see this coming and protect our forces and force structure already is a scandal in itself. And I'm going to probably write about that soon, but we've got some real leadership problems in the military and we have to solve it. And it's going to take just not accepting what's going on across the board. So I want to bring up what we just talked about with Tom on the tariff situation. And you can go to cdm.press and see Trump's comments. It is extremely hard to make a deal with China. That is true. And we go into a lot of Trump's comments, the rare earth issue. China had stopped, it said they would agree to rare earth transfers a few weeks ago when the tariffs were rolled back, and allegedly there was a peace or a ceasefire or a truce temporarily, but that hasn't happened. China is still blocking them. Trump's not happy, and therefore you've seen the removal of Chinese students. You've seen arrests of Chinese. This one woman that Tom was talking about was bringing in a deadly fungus into the U.S. to research at one of the universities. She was caught with it and charged. It's highly likely, if not 100% fact, that there are bioweapons ready to be released in the U.S. And by the way, if you haven't gone to the wellness company, twc.health/CDM, and use promo code CDM, get your emergency medical kits, because my gosh, we don't know what these people are doing. We're moving into some very difficult times here, and it's very important that you protect your family. Spend some time on the wellness company's website, twc.health/CDM, support free media, and protect your family. CDM promo code gets you 10% off there. So that is just an ongoing story that we're going to stay on, which is the economic and global capital markets impact of everything that's going on with Trump, China, Europe, India, Russia, all of it. This is another really interesting story. You saw the cold open, the Moldovan frozen conflict of Transdniester. And let me bring that map up so you can see where Transdniester is. You see that red dot in the middle? That's Transdniester. That little sliver it's in is Moldova. To the left is Romania, and above that is Ukraine, and above that is Russia. So you can, and it's right on the very near the Black Sea on the river. So you can see the strategic importance of this location. There's a couple thousand Russian peacekeepers there. There's a huge Soviet ammo dump there. Of course, that's been rotting for 40 years or longer, but people need artillery shells. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens in that region. Moldova has been infiltrated by the EU globalists. It's run by a globalist lesbian leader. And, this is the hot spot to come. It's a frozen conflict, is what it's called, from the fall of the Soviet Union. They had a war in the early 90s. A lot of people were killed. hundreds, but there was a ceasefire, and then the Russian peacekeepers were put in, and it's been just kind of sitting there ever since. And people tell me, and I wanted to go there when I was over there, but didn't get the chance, that it is like going back to the Soviet Union back in time. If you go into Transdniester with all the Lenin statues and all that, it's supposed to be really, really interesting. But you can also see the Black Sea there, and to the bottom right of that dot, that is where Russia has historically had influence. The Russian Empire, you can see the Crimean Peninsula there to the right, the Crimean War, all was fought there. This is extremely important territory, and the NATO needs that Romanian NATO base, military base on the Black Sea to continue the globalist effort to create war against Russia. So that's why they stole the elections in Romania, because it's just too important. They can't lose it. So really, really, really important story. We've been early on a lot of stories, and I'm telling you, we're early, maybe not so early on this one. It's not going away. So we'll continue to report on that, maybe in person, we'll see. Now, I wanted to go to our Israeli site and talk about Morgan Ortagus, who was running the Lebanon portfolio. President Trump put out a tweet a while back, or a Truth Social post, that yes, she was anti-Trump in the past, but we're going to let her go into this position anyway to be the special envoy to the Middle East and Lebanon policy with Hezbollah. She made a lot of enemies in that role. She pissed off a lot of people in the area. She would show up at meetings with, Star of David's on her rings and her necklaces, and it really angered the Lebanese people. She was close to former Secretary of State and head of the CIA, Mike Pompeo, who's over in Ukraine now trying to keep the wars going. So she was just dismissed, it looks like, along with two others from the Trump administration in her role in the State Department as a special envoy to Lebanon. Really important story. It hasn't got a lot of traction, but again, we're early. You want to know the stories that are important, we will bring them to you. Another one. Let's go to Nigel Farage, our good friend Gawain Toller, I have corrected to say, wrote a great piece on CDM, Farage Revolution, Reforms, Year of Unprecedented Growth. This was one you need to read. It goes into how Farage has come back and how he's completely, in a very short period of time, transformed British politics and now is the force in Britain and could rule Britain as the electoral process works its way out over time. Nigel is known for being a tactician and known for his timing, and it looks like he lived up to his expectations here to transform British politics. So read the piece by Gawain Toller. I think you'll enjoy it, and it's really, again, a story that we're all over and have been for some time, and you don't get this kind of coverage anywhere else. By the way, put cdm.press in your daily scan. We're on podcast. You can listen to it in the car. We're on Gettr, Rumble, X. We load the show up to YouTube after the show. Please support our social media. CDM1 is our Rumble channel. Give us a subscribe on YouTube. Follow our X channel. We actually have two of them. We were given one of our channels back, really, 5 years later after they took it from us. It had 100,000 viewers. Now it's down below 20 when they gave it back. But hey, we'll take it. So we have a legacy account and we have the main account. The main account is more towards following the X algorithm. The legacy account, we just post links. It's called the CDM Legacy on X. But support our social media. It's really, really, really important. Another one I wanted to talk about on the drones, we have a great contributor, Commander Salamander, and he's telling us drones are tapping the U.S. Navy on the shoulder. Look at that picture. Doesn't that look very familiar to what the drones attacked in Russia and destroyed all their aircraft lined up in a row, just like Pearl Harbor? Haven't we learned anything? But go to AFP, armedforces.press. Commander Salamander's stuff is off the charts fantastic. And he goes into how to protect the U.S. Navy from this threat. I mean, the world is different, guys. After waking up a couple days ago and seeing what happened with these drones, the world is different. We're in a different world. All this high-tech, billion-dollar aircraft stuff we have may be essentially obsolete. We're going to stay on that story, and we're going to talk about Brent Beecham later in the second hour about that former F-15 pilot in the U.S. Air Force and flew for the Israeli Air Force, flew attack jets there too. We have the best guests on the SCIF, CDM.press. We have the best intelligence briefing out there right now. We give you the stories you need to know. So stay with us. We'll be right back. We're going to talk with Danny Hulkower, the first part of the second part, and then Brent Beecham. So stay with us. We'll be right back.
Watching my friends gain more and more weight. And then eventually, I got to tell you, this is a little dark, but bad diet literally killed my whole crew.
Wow.
Diabetes, a stroke. I mean, all kinds of stuff. It's like, you had a stroke? You're not even 50 years old. You guys got to quit eating this stuff. Your body knows what's what. You're not conscious of this. But that's why people will go to the refrigerator and they'll grab this and that and the other and put together this outrageously elaborate combination of foods. Your body's trying to reach balance. Unbeknownst to us, our bodies are always trying to reach homeostasis. You can't eat all of this stuff and expect to live a long time. And one thing led to another, and I went, forget this. We're going to make our own product. So we partnered with one of the world's top 3 biochemists where nutrition specific study is concerned. I said, all I want is the best nutritional and immune support product in the world. So we mixed it in yogurt. It's a powder. I got a bag of it here. I keep one on the console all the time, just so I can show people.
Yeah.
And it's a powder. Now, this is not candy. This is hardcore nutrition. And sugar is an enemy. And most people do not know that the reason these bellies are showing up on people all over the place, your body makes fat to store the toxins it can't get rid of. So it just puts them over here. But I can tell you this, you take this for 30 days and then lay off of it for 2 or 3 days, and you'll go, good grief, give me some more. Skin, nails, hair growing back. Cut yourself and it heals in half the time.
I'm David Cross, and you may know me from my election integrity work, but I also own U.S. Asset Management, an investment advisory practice. I've been an advisor for nearly 30 years, and one of the questions I get asked most frequently is, do I have enough money relative to other people my age? And while that's an interesting question, it's also the wrong question. The right question is do you have enough money to sustain your lifestyle for the rest of your life? This is a question you should know the answer to. This is what we do. Check us out at us-am.com and look for our big proud American Eagle logo.
We have put flowers.
Welcome back to the SCIF. The drone issue has been a big issue, obviously, in the past few days. It's not going away. The world has changed. American forces are very vulnerable based on what we saw in Russia, which was, I'm sure there were a lot of sleepless nights in Moscow and other regions of the Russian Federation over the last few days as this attack happened and impacted their air fleet. To what degree is up in the air, but it was definitely a propaganda victory, at least. I want to bring in Brent Beecham now, who is a former pilot. You're still flying, Brent, or are you just
Nope.
just doing real estate now?
Just doing real estate.
Thanks for coming on. I appreciate it. I saw that and I said, I got to get Brent on because put yourself in a wing commander position. What do you do? You got all your aircraft lined up on the ramp, just like at, Pearl Harbor, and you see this. I mean, how do you react? What do you do?
Yeah, I hadn't thought about this in that same regard, but I was watching a YouTube guy yesterday, a former F-16 pilot, and he was talking about all the Chinese land the Chinese had purchased land next to military bases. And, at the time I was thinking when they announced all those kinds of things, it was to spy on us or whatever. But this kind of brings it in a whole different light. Like they could sabotage us very quickly from very close.
That's an interesting point. I haven't even thought of it. They probably already have it in place, right?
Yeah.
I would think there needs to be some raids on some of this stuff and start looking at what they got in the barn.
Right. Yeah, it's terrifying, and I think there's a lot of people in the Pentagon and, like you said, at lots of bases that are thinking about, today, what do we do? I mean, when we were at Langley, all the airplanes were on the flight line. They were uncovered. No hardening of shelters, or you could hide the airplanes in. And how long would it take to put a couple of drones on that and basically wipe out an entire wing? It wouldn't take much, and they
I have
just
been worried
proved
about
that.
this. Yeah, I have been worried about this for a long time. And if if I can see it, young captain who got out and just looking at it from
right.
Where's been our leadership? I mean, why they didn't see this, or they intentionally didn't do it, or just it was too expensive, or they didn't want to think about it. That's what not an officer's not supposed to act. They're supposed to think ahead, right? Stay ahead of the airplane, as we used to say.
Well, I think that if you look at every military disaster in history, it's a failure of imagination, whether it be Pearl Harbor or 9/11, that nobody saw that as a possible outcome. And the interesting thing was that, and again, this was they used the wire guided UAVs. So the idea of trying to jam a remote vehicle would have been whatever countermeasures you might have had would have been defeated by that, because they were flying by wire. And so now that's a whole nother issue. How far can those fly with a wire? Is that a 1 kilometer limit to them? Do you have to then start thinking about how do we clear everything from whatever that distance is?
Well, there's been a lot of reporting in this video all over the web about in Ukraine, the fields are just littered with fiber optic cable because it's all gone that direction. And I read, if I could be wrong, but some of them were going like multiple kilometers.
Right.
So, I mean, and it's very tiny wire. You can barely see it.
Yeah.
A
lot of the anti-tank weapons are the same thing. So, I mean, obviously that's the technology that's existed for a long time. And provides very accurate and unjammable communications with a missile, and obviously it's the same thing with the UAV. This whole and I know there was a lot of people that kind of poo-pooed what Elon Musk had said early on, was that the age of fighters and all that is warfare's changed. We don't need all these expensive systems. We can just fly drones. And obviously there are some limitations to what you can do with drones, but this just proved that warfare's changed no less than when the tank was introduced in World War I.
Overnight changed.
Overnight. And we've been watching this on the sidelines, this drone warfare going back and forth, but nobody saw that as a strategic weapon. It was a tactical weapon to be used in the battlefield, and to be able to basically take out a significant portion of the Russian nuclear bomber fleet. I mean, can you imagine if we lost a third of the B-1s, B-52s, and B-2s overnight? I mean,
well, we've only got 20 something operational B-2s. Of course, we may have more at Nellis and some secret, but just
I mean,
to
what
me,
would our reaction be? I mean, what would our reaction be? And I think that's the scarier part in all of this is the Russians haven't responded just yet.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's calls for this to be not, just a couple of ballistic missiles on Kiev. I think there's a real risk of this turning to a tactical nuke or.
Well, they said this morning
that
there's not going to be any peace. It's off the table now. That was probably the goal of all this, by the way, was to torpedo any peace negotiations.
Right.
I think the only answer is for Trump to just say, we're done. We're backing out. Europe, you take care of it. And that's the only way forward, in my opinion, because we don't want to be in a war with Russia. We just don't.
No.
If the EU wants to destroy itself, go ahead. But and maybe that's what they want. But
I don't think Russia is a massive threat to Western Europe. They don't have the logistics. Poland probably would defeat them in the battlefield, hands down, by themselves. But the other part about this UAV thing is the number of these things flying around that you can buy in a toy store, online, whatever. The threat, given what we're seeing now, whether it be at Columbia or Harvard with these pro-Hamas supporters, with people that are firebombing protests with Molotov cocktails. I mean, take that and start throwing around UAVs and into that, and they're low cost. Hamas, if you watched early videos from October 7th, they had hand grenades that they attached to the UAVs, and they just would drop them into
very simple technology.
It's
very effective.
Yeah, and they've had airports shut down in various locations. The UK had Heathrow was shut down over a couple of days when they had drones flying around the airport.
Mm-hmm.
Those probably were not something that was nefarious, but what if they were? And could you take one of those drones and smash it into an airliner? Yeah.
Yes.
You'd have to be a very good pilot to do that. And I mean, drone pilot, but you could put it into an engine. You could put it through the cockpit window. You got some real serious situations.
And then the economic damage is what people aren't seeing, because if you shut down, if you hit 20 places at once across the U.S. in an economic that airports, daycares, malls, grocery stores, whatever, that shuts down. Nobody's going to leave their house.
Well, remember the DC shooter. I mean, how many people stopped going to public places, even though it was very localized to the DC area? People around America were freaking out. 9/11 did. I mean, obviously did significant damage, but the damage was far reaching beyond New York, Manhattan, the Twin Towers. The economic situation across America was affected for a period of time. If these things started going off in various locations, I'd guarantee you people would be staying home and locking down, trying to avoid any kind of situation where they would be at risk, and that would significantly impact the economy.
Brent, I'm going to take a quick break. Can you stay for one more segment?
I can.
Be right back. We'll talk about some of the wars. Be right back. Stay with us on the SCIF.
Your government doesn't care about you. That's why you need a medical emergency kit. It contains life-saving medications like ivermectin, Z-Pak, and antibiotics. Stock them before they block them.
True life Alp story. I got a call from a friend of mine yesterday, honestly, true story, who said his girlfriend had just broken up with him over Alp. He wouldn't stop. And I thought to myself, that's kind of sad. And he said, no, it's not sad. Imagine if I'd married her. Now I know I was saved. Then the next day, this same friend is driving at twice the speed limit through a major American city, pulled over by a cop in a speed trap. Cop takes his license registration, goes back to the patrol car, runs him, comes back, looks in the window, and sees a tin of Alp on the dashboard. Pauses, stunned, says to my friend, you use Alp? Yeah, I do, says my friend. So do I, says the cop. We all do. He looks at my friend thoughtfully and goes, drive safely, sir, and hands back his license and registration. No ticket. So in 2 days, he's saved from a tragic marriage to a girl who doesn't like Alp and a speeding ticket. All true. It's more than a nicotine marriage.
Welcome back to the SCIF. I'm here with Brent Beecham, former classmate of mine, not former classmate, but classmate, and a former F-15 pilot and A4 pilot and airline pilot, but now a real estate developer in Atlanta. Real quick, what's going on in Hotlanta, man? What's the vibe down there?
Well, I think that the outer suburbs, and I'd reluctantly call them suburbs. They're more cities that have reemerged, particularly on the northern arc, have really gone gangbusters. It's a hot place to be, and real estate continues.
Alpharetta, Roswell, Dunwoody, that whole area.
Yeah, Woodstock even. which I would have listed maybe number 10 in our cities 20 years ago. And it's really, some very progressive leadership in various cities. And we've kind of distanced ourselves from Atlanta, particularly, post BLM riots.
Yeah.
That's really have reemerged them as independent cities.
Have you? What's your thoughts on? There's been a lot of press recently about American, I guess, mercenary F-16 guys going over and flying for Ukraine. Do you know anybody that's done that?
I don't know anybody. It seems like a really bad idea.
Yeah, that would be a bad decision. Yeah.
Yeah, you can imagine if we were to lose a pilot and captured by the Russians, Francis
go over
Gary
well.
Powers all over again.
Yeah, totally. What about let's talk Middle East? You have a lot of experience there. I mean, the Yemenis are still firing ballistic missiles up toward Ben Gurion Airport. That most of them have been shot down. A few are getting through. Syria is there. I think the Israelis are trying to figure out how to deal with Syria. Golani is saying we want peace, but in the meantime, there's projectiles being fired into the Golan Heights. So what's going on there?
So Yemen is an interesting story still, and I don't understand if that's still being directed by Iran or if they're being resupplied by Iran or if they're just using their last ballistic missiles. But the last 3 days, every single day, weapon fired. It's always at night, always to disrupt. The Arrow 3 air defense missile defense system works really well, and they've shot down basically everything that's come in. The last time that they had one that actually hit, I believe, and I think this is a story that needs to be looked at some point. The initial engagement was with the U.S. THAAD missile defense system, and it failed. And I believe that probably the Israeli Air Force then activated their secondary defense, maybe an Arrow 2 or David Sling, or maybe the Iron Dome, and so it wasn't able to engage it fully before it hit. If THAAD failed, then I don't know if you know this, but the Arrow defense system was created as a backup to THAAD in the event that
that's an
THAAD
Israeli
failed.
system, right?
Yes,
Arrow is Israeli. Yeah,
and the Israelis did not want to rely on a missile hitting a missile. They wanted an explosive charge that if they got close enough, and it's a directed charge, so it can actually be directed in a off bore sight method to take it out. So if they got close enough, they can hit with the shaped charge. The THAAD, if it misses, it just misses. There's no explosive in it, and I think
that's interesting.
I think that if I were guessing, I'm guessing the Israeli defense forces are saying, you know what, you can shoot THAAD if you feel like it, but we're going to use our Arrow 3 to take these down. I mean, I think it's a good thing to have if the Iranians shoot another 100, 200 ballistic missiles. You can't have enough missiles in the air to take them down. But on a one-off, once a day, I think Israel's just going to rely on itself to take care of it.
Well, that's probably a good thing, right? I mean, just to have a domestic capability. What about any thoughts? Obviously, the Iranians are dragging this out. Trump is trying to get a deal. There's a lot of discussion over enrichment of uranium. Any thoughts on? I mean, would the Israelis do a strike on their own? I guess is the real question. Support.
I think so. I think the big question is: are they? They're going to have to give President Trump time to sort this out, and I think they'd be foolish to act while that was ongoing. But if they run into a roadblock in these negotiations, I think Israel probably has to think it's time to strike. Now Netanyahu's had that opportunity, and I think he's probably had the green light a number of times and failed to act. And I don't know if that was
green light from Trump.
Well, from Trump or previously
Yeah.
when the 45th administration,
Mhm.
I think they had a green light to go. Biden may have given them a green light, but I
Mm.
think that they've a number of times have failed to act out of fear. And Netanyahu comes off as a war hawk and
Mhm.
whatnot, but I think in all reality, he's more afraid of failure and what it would do to him politically than he
Yeah.
is confident in the success of the Israeli Air Force. Now
Mm.
that might have changed when they went over end of last year and bombed Iran with the Israeli Air Force unopposed. Basically, you know it I think they could do a sustained multi-day attack and have no response from the Iranians to take them out.
Yeah. Interesting. So they have the force structure and the reserves to do
Yeah.
that, you think?
Yeah. Yeah.
Huh. What about Netanyahu? What's going on with Bibi? Politically, it's criminally. I mean, there's a lot happening, a lot of
Yeah.
currents going on there. What's your sense?
Well, my initial thought was this was kind of a Trump situation. I think a lot of people in America, particularly conservatives, say, well, just like they use lawfare against President Trump, they're using it against Netanyahu.
Mhm.
I think it's a little deeper than that, and I think
Mhm.
Netanyahu there's a lot more than just some smoke. I think there's fire.
Mhm.
The ongoing conflict has kind of delayed some of that, and he's making the argument you can't have elections, you can't have a trial while the war is going on.
There's
And
a reason for that, I guess.
yeah, yeah, but but he's deeply unpopular,
Uh-huh.
and particularly the coalition partners he has makes him look even worse.
Yeah.
And I think that
You're talking
when the
Smotrich and Gavir and those guys.
yeah, Ingvir's like they're horrible people,
Yeah.
and um, just nobody stood up in the center and presented themselves as a viable candidate to beat him,
Mhm.
and he is a master politician, if nothing else.
Mhm.
He knows how to get the right group of people together to keep himself in power, but there's a point in which you've been in power for so long that you're just a little bit arrogant about
Yeah.
that power.
That's when you
And
make mistakes,
yeah,
I think.
yeah,
Any thoughts on Gaza? You wanna talk about that at all? I mean, it's a mess, man. I don't see how the
yeah.
other side gets out of this. It's a mess.
Well, and again, I probably gonna have some of my Israeli friends of mine throw darts at me after this, but this, the idea that the hostages are the preeminent concern, and obviously, if it's your kid, it is your only concern.
Mhm.
But if they don't defeat Hamas in some way, shape, or form,
Mhm.
and there's going to be another set of family members, another 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the line, they're going to be facing the same situation. And so the battle has to be won, and that may be, and I don't think you can just defeat them militarily. But Gaza has been flattened. I mean, if
I
you've
know. There's
seen, if
nothing
you,
left. I mean, it's and that's intentional, right? I mean, it was
yeah,
flat. I mean, there is nowhere to live. I
right.
mean, so I don't
But
know what.
the idea that this is a genocide is ridiculous. If
Yeah.
in fact there's a genocide, why aren't Arab neighbors like Egypt opening the doors open and say, "Hey, come over and we'll help you"?
Mhm.
Where is the
Egypt, for instance. Yeah.
right? And if they're starving, then why is Hamas sitting on loads of food that they're hoarding and actually shooting at their own citizens who've become a lot more aggressive recently, not just towards Americans that are handing out food aid, but
Mhm.
also against Hamas. They've
Yeah, I've
had
seen it.
some attacks on Hamas run facilities, but the Western press and the progressives in America and throughout the West have fallen for this time and again. Pallywood makes
Mhm.
the best stories, and they show over and over again the same story ran about this doctor who had 9 kids that were killed. It's the same story run from 2022, the same pictures, the same everything. And people keep making it sound like this is a brand new story.
Because it
And
works. I mean, the propaganda
yeah,
works. There's a low information voter out there.
yeah,
So,
yeah. And
that's
they're falling for it on all these campuses across America. And I don't know how we come back from this. It's a scary situation to think that, again, elite universities, however you want to define that, elite universities have fallen to these progressives. And if we thought that the Vietnam era protests and some of the terrorism that happened back in that period, it did happen. They bombed the Capitol building and that kind of thing. But I think this is far deeper and far worse. These are people who have fallen for a terrorist organization, and they're supporting them wholeheartedly with no reservation. And they're absolutely.
I think the Trump administration has realized that. I think they're facing it. Whether they'll actually deal with the problem, I don't know. But what I can't understand is what the left, if you want to call it that, the Marxists, the cabal, whatever, that's pushing all this. I mean, they're using them as kind of brown shirts. I guess I'm trying to understand the concept of, is it just to destroy Western civilization, or is it because these people are going to be a problem for them at some point? And maybe they just don't care because they know what's coming. I don't know.
Yeah, I think probably say the Democrats that are, the Schiffs and the Pelosi's and whatnot have used them as a weapon against conservatives, against the Republican Party, the MAGA movement. I think within the hardcore left and within those student movements, they truly believe America is an evil place that needs to be destroyed. And I think that's probably the most dangerous thing of all of this is it. And you ask them what's their alternative, they don't have one. If it's such a horrible place, why do we have 20 million people trying to break through the gates to get in here every day? So it's a bad situation. I don't know how you undo what these people have been trained to believe about America.
Yeah. Last question, markets, real estate. What are you seeing in the real estate markets with mortgage rates and all that?
I think we're stuck right now until things are a little bit more clear about tariffs. And Powell has been sitting on interest rates for a bit and unwilling to move them. But I do think that if we could get rid of the Fed, or if you just said, hey, the Fed, here's your rules, you can move interest rates between 3% and 5%. There's some natural number that is like reasonable. And we got really used to basically 0% interest.
That's true. That was intentional to keep them at zero too for so long.
Yeah,
the Fed was doing that. That's quite obvious.
Yeah, and it created a bubble. And every time you skew things like that, you do create bubbles. And I think we have to get used to the idea that, my first mortgage when I moved back to Atlanta was, I think, 7%.
Yeah, I remember 7, 8, 9%. Very 30 years ago, 40 years ago.
My dad had 18% interest loan on his house in 1970.
But they also had the economy that would support a job to support that. So
yeah, that's the thing, is that if you look at all the statistics now, it says that in actually Depression era America, it was like 3 years of salary could buy a house cash.
Yeah.
And now it's like 7 or 8 or 10 years. So we've really, really lost the power. And I think that, again, that was all intentional as well.
Yes.
That's the reason why we have low wage, immigrants from Latin America that come here, is it's to keep the economy, to have the appearance that the economy is okay.
Yeah.
And we can buy cheap things and we can have cheap labor to mow our lawn or whatever. But we're masking the loss of our income and the power that we have. Like if my dad was a sole income in our family, and we lived a great life. And now it takes two to make to barely make it. And it's
Brent, yeah, I love having you on because you're
Yeah.
like the perfect guest. I can talk like multiple subjects. I can talk war. I can talk flying.
Yeah.
I can talk economics. It's travel
Right.
around the world. It's all good. I just bring Brent on. He'll do it. Thanks, my man. I appreciate it. We'll see you next.
Thank
All
you.
right,
Take care.
Bye.
See you.
Contagion kit is something new. Can you tell us about that and what's in it and what it's for?
Well, the Contagion Kit is specifically geared towards a respiratory virus. It includes some of the medications that we've been talking about that are well known to be able to treat respiratory viruses. And importantly, it includes a nebulizer, a way to aerosolize a liquid medication so that you can breathe it into the lungs. Again, these kits are not meant to replace your doctor or a relationship with a doctor. They are not meant for you to fly solo. We have telemedicine visits available if you have any questions about the symptoms you're having. There's a booklet in there as well that supports and kind of coaches you through what symptoms you may be having from something. So these aren't meant to be a panacea to replace everything in medicine. It's a way, however, for people to feel and to be prepared, to be at the ready, to be more resilient, and to be more immune from the sorts of intrusions that we saw during COVID, where your insurance company or your own doctor or the pharmacist or the pharmacy was refusing to let people get a hold of medication.
Launched ALP. We've had 4 flavors, but we are proud to announce ALP has a brand new flavor, one of several we'll be rolling out over the next year or so, and it is Sweet Nectar. I have personally tested this product 2 at a time, and it's excellent. Sweet Nectar, the new flavor out from ALP, really, really good. Go to alppouch.com. You can order it in bulk by the pallet if you want. I have strongly recommended Sweet Nectar. And stay tuned for morning flavors.
When Johnny comes marching home again, hurrah, hurrah, we'll give him a hearty welcome then, hurrah, hurrah. Oh, the men will cheer, the boys will shout, the ladies they will all turn out and we'll all feel gay when Johnny comes marching home. And we'll all feel gay when Johnny comes marching home.
Welcome back to the SCIF. The show's getting so good that it goes by so fast. It's already been 2 hours. I really appreciate you joining us today. I want to give a shout out to my first novel, Currency. And I just want to read a review. If you go to Amazon, there's over 500 reviews. This one, first of all, I'm officially hooked on L Todd Wood's writing, and it only took reading Currency to get me there. Strong plot line with actual sound economic lesson, well-balanced, believable characters. Includes a solid background, sound history involving the likes of Abraham Lincoln, Aaron Burr, Captain Kidd, and intertwined with current events related to present-day economic issues. All of the characters, main and secondary, play a vital part in the development of the story, bring realistic yet not obvious ending. I read multiple books a week, but it's been a while since I happily spent a few reading sessions in one day with my nose stuck in any book, print or electronic. In less than a day, I used every spare minute and stayed up past my bedtime reading because I wanted to see how it ends. I was not disappointed, and sure you will not be either. 5 stars doesn't seem like enough of a recommendation, considering how much I like this book. If you like historically based novels with a strong plot, high-quality characters, believable sleuthing, and a mind-catching flow to the writer's words, this is a must-read book for you. So check out Currency. It's available anywhere. Books are sold, historyofbooks.com. You can get it direct from there. This is the book. This is the first in the Connor Murray series. The rest of them will be out, re-released soon, and I'm writing the 5th novel. It's called Deep, and that will be out not soon, but it will be out. Put it that way. I really appreciate you joining us today. We're going to have a big show tomorrow, already lining up the guests. Let me see if I can say who's going to be on tomorrow. Actually, hold on one second. I'll tell you. Actually, I don't have that to say yet because we're still trying to confirm some people. So join us tomorrow. It'll be a great show. I guarantee you. We always have the best guests, the best intelligence brief out there, Monday through Friday, 10 to noon. Oh, tonight on the Georgia show, I'll be with Brian K. Pritchard as Bill Quinn is hospitalized. We'll be digging into what's going on in Georgia at 7 p.m. Eastern on the Georgia show, available anywhere on cdm.press or georgiarecord.com. With that, I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for joining us on the SCIF.